Welcome back to Breaking the Barrier. I'm Rebel Saklocha, and today I get to welcome a very special lady to the podcast. She is a passionate storyteller, a can-do kind of woman, and a field editor for Texas Farm Bureau. She also was recently named to Cowgirl Magazine's 30 Under 30 class of 2025. I am so excited for you to hear the wisdom of my friend, Shelby Shank. Shelby, thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebel. That was such a sweet intro.
Well, these days you travel across the state of Texas telling meaningful stories in agriculture, but there have been quite a few steps to get there. Tell us about your upbringing and when you began immersing yourself in ag.
Yeah. So I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, just outside of it, in kind of like a suburban kind of area. So I didn't grow up in agriculture or in the Western industries, but I was really I always admired the rural way of life. And so I got involved in 4 H when I was about 13 years old. I always tell people that I wanted a pet pig, and my parents said the only way I could do that was if I joined 4 H. So did that and fell in love with the organization, quickly became involved at the county level and state level, being a camp counselor and just kind of, getting involved in everything that I possibly could. And so that really fueled my passion for agriculture. And from there, I went to go study at Murray State University, where I got my bachelor's in animal science and had quite a few internships during that time. And, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do after graduation, but knew that I kind of wanted to study more agricultural communications. And that's how I ended up at Texas Tech University studying for my master's. And from there, just kind of ended up at Texas Farm Bureau.
Absolutely. Well, how we know each other actually is through one of the many internships you completed, as you mentioned. I remember being so impressed with all of the opportunities that you found and carried out. Talk about a few of those because though they're just internships and for a short amount of time, I really feel like they're impactful, especially as a college student to get those experiences.
Yeah. So I kind of set a goal for myself. I was the first one in my family to attend college, and I made a goal for myself to get an internship every summer, and that kind of ended up being internships throughout the school year as well. So my first internship, I was interning at a hog farm in the farrowing and gestation barns. So that was quite a unique experience, but then through that, I was able to get a job at our university hog farm and was able to like spearhead our marketing there, managing our Facebook and Instagram accounts. And from there, I had some really awesome mentors in my life who really encouraged me to continue seeking out opportunities. And so some of those internships were at a lot of major stock shows. And that really kind of led to a lot of connections, to like following just a bunch of people on social media and seeing what kind of internships they had available. And so I remember seeing the Cowboy Channel one pop up, and it was during the National Finals Rodeo when it was in Fort Worth. And I was like, oh my gosh, this would be a amazing opportunity. And I applied for it, and by the grace of God, was able to, get that experience, met some really awesome people, and kind of broaden my network. And truly, that honestly opened a lot of doors for me. And fell in love with Texas at that point. I knew that's where I wanted to be, knew that this was the industry that I wanted to be in. Um, and so just through like the connections that I was able to build there has honestly led me to my job at Texas Farm Bureau. It was honestly just like a big God moment of how all those internships throughout college and grad school led me to Farm Bureau. I remember on my first interview with my now current boss, she was like, "Oh, do you know this person?" And I was like, "Yeah, I worked with them at Indiana Farm Bureau for an internship." And she was like, "Oh, do you know this person?" I was like, "Yeah, that's one of my professors at Murray State." And then with my current internship at that time was with Cultivate Agency, and she had known some of the people that were there as well. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is such a crazy God moment. It's so amazing to see like how all these puzzle pieces are coming together, and just showing me where I'm supposed to be at in life."
Very cool. Well, I love that you are an Ohio native that has turned an official Texan.
Mhm.
You have fully embraced Texas culture and living in the Lone Star State, which I think is really cool. But talk
Yes.
about your transition to Texas Farm Bureau and what a day in the life of a field editor looks like.
Yeah. So when I was at Texas Tech University, I was over in Lubbock. So I was in West Texas, and I'm very partial to West Texas. And I think that's just because it's the first place that I lived in once I got here. But now I'm in Central Texas. I'm in Waco. That's where Texas Farm Bureau's headquarters is located. Um, yeah, so it just hit the ground running in January of 2023, yeah, at Farm Bureau. And so in my role as the field editor, I am responsible for essentially being the voice for Texas agriculture. And I basically go around, travel the state of Texas, take photos, interview farmers and ranchers, and then I'll write up their stories. And those are shared on both of our digital and print publications, as well as on social media. And yeah, so a typical day in the life, I always found it, kind of cliche when people are like, oh, like not every day is the same. But that is really true. There are some weeks where I'm on the road a lot, and some weeks where I am in the office just working on articles. And so that's basically what I do. I travel with our video team, and we'll kind of spearhead those interviews with farmers and ranchers together. They'll work on the video piece, and I'll work on the publication piece. And yeah, it's just kind of what I do.
Yeah, very cool. So, what's cool about your role is you're really not limited to one thing. You're not just writing, you're not just doing social media. You kind of get to dip your toe in a few different buckets. What would you say is the most useful skill in your role that you use every day?
I would say probably just being able to have a conversation with people. So much of my role is just getting to talk with farmers and ranchers and getting to hear their stories. When I was in college, people would always ask me, like, oh, what do you want to do with your degree? What do you want to do when you graduate? And I had always said, like, I just want to be able to be the voice for agriculture. I really just want to, share the stories of farmers and ranchers. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it is working for an organization in agriculture or if it's working with Farm Bureau. And it's just crazy how God has like answered that prayer and has truly given me my dream job. My job is just so unique in the aspect of like what I do. And I just think, the most useful skill that I have is just being able to like talk to people.
Most definitely. Well, I have to imagine that your passion for storytelling comes from somewhere. Obviously, we're lucky that you're sharing that gift with agriculture and with the Western community, but where do you think that comes from and how did you develop that?
I love to read and I love to watch movies and shows and whatnot. And of course, some of those definitely involve like the Western way of life. And so I think that's where, my passion for storytelling comes from is just seeing how others do it and wanting to do that same thing. And I've always made it my mission to be able to bridge the gap between consumers and producers. And so I think that's just where that passion for storytelling really comes in.
Yeah. Well, as someone who didn't necessarily grow up in agriculture, what kind of fresh perspective do you think you have when it comes to bridging that gap? Because, a lot of people really take that knowledge for granted because they don't have the outsider's perspective.
Mhm. Ugh, that's such a good question. Um, I think I just bring a very unique perspective in just always wanting to learn. And so when I'm doing those interviews with farmers and ranchers, I love to ask them all kinds of questions because I want to know everything. If we're, on a strawberry farm, I want to know all the ins and outs of strawberry farming. Like, where do you get the seeds from? When are they planted? What kind of soil do they need? How long are they in the ground? How are they harvested? Where do they go from there? What does that process look like? So I'm constantly asking questions and wanting to, get all of that information from those interviews. And I think it offers like a really unique perspective, especially when I'm writing those articles, because I think of, what would I want to learn and hear about, in these articles. And so a lot of that is, what does the process look like for planting or harvesting that crop or raising that animal? And then what's the passion behind those people of why they do what they do. So like my most recent one was over some peanut farmers And, I divide the article up into, kind of some like their family history, going into their operation, and then just like why they do what they want to do. And honestly, it's just, holding that legacy and continuing it.
Very cool. Well, I have to imagine that many of the people that you interact with and interview are strangers initially when you pull up to their farm or ranch. What would be your number one tip for building rapport with people? Because ultimately, you have to establish some level of trust before they're going to give you any information that makes your job
Mhm.
easier.
So a lot of the farmers and ranchers that we interview are our Texas Farm Bureau members, and I've been able to meet a lot of them at just like various conferences and meetings that we hold. Um, a lot of them are from our Young Farmer and Rancher program that we have, and so the different events that come with that. And so I've been able to like build friendships with these people at those various events, and I think that has truly helped. And so when I get an idea to do a story on them, it's just a simple like phone call or text message that's like, hey, would you be willing to do this? We would really love to feature, your story, your family, your operation. And so I truly think it just comes with the nature of the job of meeting various people and, forming friendships with them, and they later become family. So as stressful as our annual meeting can be, as it approaches this weekend, I'm so excited because I get to see various people who, live 3 to 6 hours away. And it's just so fun, being able to see them for the weekend, see their families.
Very cool. Well, since you've been in this role, I'd love to know what your favorite story you've ever written or produced is or was, and what made that one so special.
We talk about this all the time when we're traveling to the next shoot. Me and our video guys, we're always like, okay, what was your favorite story that you've done within the past 2 years since you've been here? Or like, what's your favorite story that you've done this year? And I honestly think it was our story that we did over strawberries in Poteet, Texas. Poteet is very well known for their strawberries. And I think I like that one so much because not only did the photos turn out very well when I took them, I really enjoyed writing their story. Um, but it was around that time that the Wes Anderson trend was going around on TikTok. And last minute, I was like, hey, we need to do this. This would be so fun. The video guys that, I travel with and work with, they love movies. They're movie snobs, I'll call them. So they, understood the trend and they're like, yeah, we should do this. And rather than like just taking it on their phone, we really used our gear that we had, like our camera gear. And I think that's what really helped, make the video turn out very well. And we got like a lot of success and traction on that video. Um, and so I think that's probably why it was one of my favorites because it was like a last minute thing that, we wanted to do and it turned out very well.
Very cool. Well, I don't necessarily think of Texas and strawberry farming in the same sentence, so I don't know. I'm definitely going to be investigating after we get done talking because that sounds like a really neat story.
Texas has so much, so much. I'm used to like only seeing, corn and soybeans around everywhere and like some cows and pigs and whatnot. No, Texas has everything.
What has surprised you the most about Texas agriculture?
Oh gosh. One, just with like how diverse it is. Um, some cool crops that we've done recently, definitely the strawberries. I think the one that stands out to me the most is sunflowers. I never really thought about sunflowers as like a big commodity. I always just thought of them as like a really beautiful flower. But they actually have like a lot of use, and there's actually a lot of sunflower farms in Texas. But there's peanuts, carrots, cabbage, all kinds of things in Texas that I didn't even think of.
Very cool. Well, we talked about people skills and how that is helpful in your day to day job, but obviously you're doing technical things like writing, editing, um, doing things in a, how do I want to put this? I feel like social media changes by the minute, by the day, always trying to, stay on top of that stuff. What sort of technical skill when it comes to media and communications proves to be the most helpful for you?
I think for me is probably just being able to take a picture that really captures one, the moment, but also the story that you're trying to tell. In my job, we I'm trying to like split it up because yes, I do some social media, but it's not like my main job.
Mhm.
My friend and coworker, Emmy Powell, she's the one who's responsible for a lot of our social media at Farm Bureau. And so her and my current boss, Julie Tomasic, really spearhead that, and I help as needed. But truly, I think is being able to, take a picture that captures the moment and captures the story, um, and just, writing up an article that, goes along with that. Um, my job truly is a blessing because I did not take a single journalism class when I was in college or grad school, and writing a thesis is much different than writing an article. So it's truly amazing how I'm able to write these stories, every day, each week, every month, and whatnot without taking a single journalism class.
That's super cool. I love that. Well, obviously, your connections have really helped you get to where you are, and you build on that network day by day. But if anyone is listening to this, they're a college student that is, looking to expand their network or expand their opportunities, what advice would you give someone in that situation?
I would say, honestly, just seek out opportunities wherever you can. A lot of the internships that I was able to find during my time in school was doing just like a basic Google search of agricultural communications internships available. I didn't put a limit on where those were. I was very open to going wherever they were. Um, I lived in North Carolina for a summer for an internship. I traveled to Texas many times for an internship. I was in Indiana. So I didn't really set a limit on myself on where to go for those internships. But now there are so many resources available and like at our fingertips to find those resources, like of the West. There's various people that I've seen on TikTok who share open internships or job opportunities that are in the agricultural and Western industries. So I really just think it comes with seeking out those opportunities and not just expecting them to land at your feet. I was also I don't know, I admire a lot of people and I like to follow them on social media. And so I have followed a bunch of people within those industries because I want to be in that industry. And many of them will share, opportunities that are open. And that's honestly how I found the Cowboy Channel one.
Yeah. Well, there are very few people that are bold enough to uproot themselves and move across the country or move states away. What are your biggest takeaways from those experiences, and how did you establish yourself in a new place?
So I think I want to say I was maybe 19 or 20 when I moved to North Carolina for the summer for an internship. And that's truly where I was able to, kind of discover who I was and what it was going to be like to, plant myself in a different community. So, where I went to college was about 6 hours away from my home, but, I quickly got involved in, like classes and extracurriculars and stuff like that and was able to make friends that way. But I feel like when you move somewhere far away from your home and you don't know a single person, it can be very hard and intimidating to find that community. And so I experienced that in North Carolina, and I definitely experienced that when I moved to Waco. But I'm so thankful that, I had a friend from grad school that was in Waco with me. She introduced me to an excellent church here in Waco, and I was able to, really get involved in there, join a life group, and meet friends that way and just have been able to build my community here. So my biggest takeaway from that is just getting plugged into a local church and seeing who you can meet there.
Awesome. Well, it's really easy to just focus on the career aspects of this conversation, but how would you describe Shelby outside of the workplace? What other things are you interested in?
Ugh, I love to read. All I can think about most days when I get home from work is just reading. I love reading. Um, I also watch the same shows over and over. I just found out that Friday Night Lights is being taken off of Netflix, and I was
No.
like, "Oh my gosh, I need to watch this immediately before they take it away." And this is probably like my 10th time rewatching it, but I love the show so
That's
much.
insane. I love that.
So, yeah, basically, outside of work, I love to read. I love to get together with my friends and just spend intentional time with them. Pretty involved in my church, so going to young adult nights there or any other events that they have at church. Um, since I've been able to like broaden my network and have friends basically all over, I love to go visit them as well and travel. So yeah, that's basically who I am outside of work.
Awesome. Okay, well, I have to know what is your number one book recommendation of all time, and then the best book you've read this year.
Okay. I'm going to say probably my favorite book of all time is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It was such a beautiful story, and then there was like a little twist at the end that like I was not expecting. And like I've recommended it to some people and they're like, "Oh yeah, I saw that coming." And I was like, "You did?"
That's
I don't know.
devastating.
I know because I wasn't seeing it, but it was so good. And then this year, I think just because I've been able to like make friends this way, somehow I'm involved in two book clubs in Waco.
That's
But
incredible.
we've all read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, and her third book, Onyx Storm, is coming out in January. And I think that's probably my favorite book from this year. Not only was it good, but just being able to like talk about it with other people and like form connections with them that way has been really sweet.
Yeah, very cool. Well, we are nearing the end of 2024, which for many people means New Year's resolutions and that sort of thing. I'm not sure if you subscribe to those necessarily, but what are some goals you have for yourself looking forward, either in the immediate future or more long term looking?
Yeah. So honestly, I'm not a person who really likes resolutions. Um, I feel like I'll set a resolution and then by the end of January, I like forget all about it. So I'm always like making goals for myself throughout the year to like, try and achieve. Um, but, I'm not really sure where the Lord wants me next year in 2025. So I'm just going to try and, be prayerful and intentional in that time. But try to enjoy like as much as 2025 as I can, broaden my network, get to know more people, form more friendships and whatnot. So I think that's the goal for 2025.
Yeah, and we can't forget you were recently named to Cowgirl Magazine's 30 Under 30 list for 2025, so that will be an exciting, bright spot for you there. What are you most looking forward to about that experience, and what does it mean to you to be on that list this year?
Yeah, so it is honestly such an honor to be a part of Cowgirl Magazine's 30 Under 30 class of 2025. I'm still a little bit shocked that, I am now a part of it. I admire so many women who have been in, Cowgirl 30 Under 30 in the past years. Look up to them, keep telling myself I want to be in that industry, I want to be them. And now I'm like, have the same honor as them. I was like, that's so crazy. I have like a little bit of imposter syndrome, but it truly is such a testament of the Lord and just, how he answers our prayers. He gives us our desires. Um, and so it truly is such an honor. And I'm so excited to, get to catch up with you in person, meet everyone else who's like in our class and just get to know them and, see what the future has for all of us.
Yeah. What I love the most about your story is it's over and over again, you putting yourself out there, making yourself vulnerable, and finding success because of it. What advice would you give someone when it comes to getting out of their comfort zone and trying something new? Maybe they didn't grow up in agriculture too and they want to take that step.
I think it just goes back to seeking out those opportunities. I'll admit, I think that's something that I've kind of failed to do this year in particular, and especially just like being in my first big girl job and whatnot. Um, Wanting to like build those networks, but not sure like how to go about it at this time. Um, but just continue to seek out those opportunities, always be eager to learn. Um, and I really think that's just my biggest piece of advice for anyone is just seek out those opportunities. Yes, it can be really scary, to get that rejection, but I try to go back and see it as like, okay, well, that's not what the Lord has for me at this moment. Maybe I'll try again or I'll try something else and, maybe that's when it'll happen. So lots of prayer, lots of being vulnerable, and, just kind of throwing a spaghetti noodle at the wall and seeing what sticks.
I love it. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. Is there anything else you'd like people to know about you or your story?
I don't think so. I just hope that, they can truly see um, just the power of the Lord in my story. And I hope that I can be a reflection of Christ's love to other and, just everything that he is and all the blessings that come, with being a Christian and whatnot. But yeah.
Most definitely. Well, Shelby, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. I am so grateful our paths crossed a few years ago. I'm excited to see you in April and even more excited to continue following along.
Yes, I can't wait to see you either.
Well, thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Breaking the Barrier. As a reminder, if you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share with a friend, and all previous episodes are available to watch on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in.